Welcome to a very special episode of my new My Two Cents series. Today, instead of a regular Steven Universe theory, we're going to be talking about my 2 cents on Steven Universe itself. It's not as if I've never talked about the show as a whole, my feelings on the show as a whole, in any way, shape, or form, but while I have made videos on my thoughts on individual episodes, I've made plenty of theory videos about the show, and I've talked in depth about several of the characters, I've never made a video about my overall feelings about the series and the network that hosts it. Yes, this is going to be a critical video, but I want to make something clear. First of all, it's not going to be entirely critical. I'm still going to talk about the things I like, just like I did with Rick and Morty. And second of all, I want to state outright that just because I'm speaking critically about the show doesn't mean I dislike it now. Steven Universe is still probably my favorite show that's running currently. At the very least, it's my favorite cartoon that's running currently. I talk to people all the time who think that just because I don't post things critical about Steven Universe often, this is mostly on my Tumblr, just FYI, that means that I don't have any critical feelings about the show at all. And likewise, when I do post something critical rarely on my Tumblr about Steven Universe, I'll have people come and tell me that now that means that I'm part of the SU critical community, and that's not what it means at all. It just means that I have a well-rounded opinion about this piece of media that I've dedicated so much time to. And since I'm genuinely running low on theory ideas and we don't know when any new episodes are coming yet, I felt like it was a good idea to insert this video into my schedule in order to space out what theories I do have. Yes, I'm padding out my channel, but at this point I don't really see another option. And that's actually the first thing that I want to talk about, and that's the network's treatment of Steven Universe. You could argue that Cartoon Network has had better quality shows than Steven Universe on it in the past, but it is at the very least one of their highest quality modern shows. Is Adventure Time still running? I heard that was ending soon or some other thing. Assuming that it's still running, it's definitely one of the contenders. Regular Show was a contender. I even think as a straight up comedy, Gumball is pretty freaking amazing, so it's a contender too. But Steven Universe is up there, and while there are some issues with the fandom for Steven Universe, as there are with all fandoms, Steven Universe fans still make up a sizable chunk of the viewership for Cartoon Network, at least when Steven Universe is actually airing. Steven Universe fans want to support the show. They want to watch the show on its home network to show their solidarity and support, and yet not only does Cartoon Network put us through these grueling long hiatuses where they don't air any new episodes at all, despite the fact that the episodes are done. We know that they're done. They hardly air any reruns either, choosing to run reruns of things like Teen Titans Go, which I haven't talked about yet on this channel, but I definitely will be soon. It's such an asinine show, taking characters and concepts from one of the greatest cartoons of the modern era and dumbing them down, and I don't use that term very often. I think that it's overused. I think that a lot of the times when people say that something is being dumbed down, it's not. It's just being revamped. But undoubtedly, Teen Titans Go is a literal dumbed down version of Teen Titans. The fact of the matter is, Steven Universe is a much better show. Its fans are much more loyal fans. It's like the difference between fans of the original Transformers and subsequent quality series such as Beast Wars and Transformers Prime versus people who are just fans of the Michael Bay movies. And I'm not saying that anyone is stupid for being in the fandom that they're in, don't get me wrong, but I guarantee that fans of the original series, fans of Beast Wars, fans of Transformers Prime, have more objectively poignant reasons for being in those fandoms than people who are fans of the Michael Bay movies, because they're much simpler stories in concept. Steven Universe has substance to it, Teen Titans Go doesn't. But because it doesn't, it's a safer bet for Cartoon Network to air, because fewer people talk about it. It's the kind of show you can watch on autopilot because it doesn't make you think any hard thoughts. Regardless of its flaws, Steven Universe raises questions. It teaches hard lessons, and it asks people to think, and that just doesn't seem to be something that Cartoon Network wants. And I think that is such a huge letdown, such a huge disappointment. The original Teen Titans aired on Cartoon Network, and it asked hard questions and asked people to think. It's like Cartoon Network has just lost something that made them what they were. And maybe that's why for their 25th anniversary that happened, this past weekend, I think, they did so little to remember their past. They are happy to keep replaying the same shows with the same status quo over and over again and neglecting the shows that actually matter. Which brings me to the first thing that I really want to talk about in detail regarding Steven Universe, and that's that I feel that it matters. I feel that it is telling a story that matters. Not so much the whole conflict with Homeworld thing, that's pure fiction. That's just escapist fantasy fiction, science fiction, stuff. I'm talking about the story of the people, the core narratives surrounding their characters. Steven Universe has such a flawed cast of characters. Everyone in the series has some notable flaw. Yes, they are flawed to different degrees, but they are all flawed people. And yet when their stories are told, they're shown equal respect. So you have all these different people from all these different walks of lives with all these different experiences. And while none of their storylines are resolved, so I don't know how it's all going to play out in the end, so therefore I can't say anything definitive about the storylines overall. The fact that you have so many people with so many different flaws and so many different traumas, too, that's important too. Given time, given equal respect by the story, at least when they're actually addressed by the story, that alone means something. That's representation. I think that Steven Universe's biggest triumph up to this point has been its strong representation. You have a cast entirely made up of badass women. These are the characters with real power in the show. They're coded to be racially diverse, and they are accompanied on their missions by this non-traditionally masculine young man. Characters like this in fiction help people who are really like this to see themselves in their heroes, and that's important. Yeah, representation can certainly be overdone, but I think Steven Universe does it in a perfectly reasonable way. You have representation for a diverse sampling of gender identities, sexual identities, and personality types. Then there's the lore, which I obviously enjoy quite a bit because I talk about it all the time. It's not perfect. The show has had a few messy retcons, which muddy up the lore quite a bit. But for the most part, it's super interesting, and the way that it reveals itself systematically in small portions through Steven's point of view is very interesting. But then this method of storytelling can be a problem at the same time. As the series has progressed, we've been introduced to more and more characters, many of whom seem to deserve the same kind of focus as the existing characters. And yet, because of Steven's point of view, characters like Lars and Eyeball and even Lapis and Peridot, who are on Earth where the other characters are most of the time, don't see the development that they should, because we can't just have an episode focusing on them. Steven has to be present for us to be able to see what's going on. This means that large chunks of character development happen entirely off screen, and the bigger the cast gets, the more of a problem that's going to be. Look at Eyeball, for example. She testified at the trial, right? Which means she must have made it back to Homeworld after she was left floating in space. Which means that Navy most likely managed to pick her and the other rubies up and take them home. But we don't know because we can't follow anyone other than Steven, and Steven wouldn't have realistically been there for those events. This was interesting for a while, seeing only through Steven's point of view, but enough of the lore has been revealed at this point that I think that they could do away with that storytelling device and just tell us regular stories at this point. I'm also getting really tired of the condensed stories that they're having to tell. I get that they're locked into an 11-minute time slot for each new episode, but then tell us more two-part episodes. Episodes which lead directly into each other. You have a more diverse cast now. You have characters with deeper flaws now that need to be explored, and 11 minutes per episode just isn't enough to do that in enough detail to satisfy anybody. I also think that the show needs to stop introducing new characters at this point. New fusions are fine because they're amalgams of characters who already exist. Anything that we learn about those individual characters can theoretically be applied to their fusions as well, so characterization happens for them regardless whether they're there or not. But introducing new Homeworld characters who are supposed to be sympathetic, introducing the Zoomen, for example, that are supposed to be sympathetic characters. Because of the way the show is written, we are very likely to never see another recurrence of those characters, or if we do see another recurrence of those characters down the line, it'll only be for 1 or 2 episodes at a time. The Zoomen, the Zircons, the Rubies, the Famethus, these are all characters who feel like they deserve large amounts of attention, who feel like they deserve development, and we're likely never going to get that. At least not to any kind of satisfying degree. It's the same for the Off-Colors, and for Bismuth, and Jasper. Now, I haven't been talking about Lapis and Peridot a lot. They got way less of development than I think they should have last season, but I'm reserving judgment when it comes to their storylines, because it looks like they're going to get a lot more in this coming season, assuming that it ever comes. I understand that the crew wants to tell this sweeping story with all of these complex characters, but introducing these new characters, when you have so little time to devote to them, every little bit of time that you end up devoting to them takes away from the development time for the characters who already exist, whose stories are not concluded yet. We have the rest of Season 5 and a 32-episode Season 6, I believe is what was announced, and I just can't see how they're going to be able to wrap up everyone's stories satisfactorily in the time that they have left. And a big reason for why that is the case is because they keep introducing all these new characters. There is a difference in feel between a character who is intended to be a one-off and a character who is intended to be recurring. And while it is great that it seems like every character they write feels like a recurring character, that's a detriment to the show, because now we want them to be recurring characters when chances are they're not going to be, and even when they do become recurring characters, that just means less time for everyone else. Don't even get me started on characters like Centipedal, too, who we haven't even really technically met yet. Centipedal, and by extension all of the corrupted gems. The series keeps implying that they're going to be cured and we're going to get to meet them properly. Centipedal even already has an ongoing storyline, and we don't even know what she looks like or sounds like, or what her actual personality is because she's still corrupted. This is my biggest problem with the show overall, and that's just how overblown the character arcs are becoming. We still barely know anything about Pearl's past, and the longer it takes them to reveal anything significant, the more we're going to be let down if it doesn't turn out to be worthwhile. Just finish telling her story already, or finish telling somebody else's story, finish someone else's story arc, so that we have a little bit of hope that it's going to happen at some point. The only character who I can think of who may be finished with their story arc is Amethyst. And again, because everything is shown through Steven's point of view, we didn't get an Amethyst episode where she came to terms with her past and her story arc was concluded. We were just told about it after it happened. We saw a good chunk of it, and I'm pretty satisfied with the chunk that we saw. But then that last bit of development happened off screen, and we only learned about it when she told Steven about it. I guess the point that I want to make overall is that a lot of the choices that this crew made early on in the development of this show that made it really unique and fresh and interesting are now a detriment to the storytelling. And at this point, it's too late to go back on a lot of them. It's too late to change a lot of them. You just gotta work with what you have. Still, at the end of the day, Steven Universe is a really great show. I only feel so strongly about the few things about it that I really dislike because I love everything else so much and want to see it be the best show that it can be moving forward from this point. I hate the way the network treats the show. I hate the long hiatuses, but I recognize that none of that is the fault of the cast or the crew working on the show. And so despite the fact when I think Steven Universe nowadays, I typically think long delays and hiatuses, I do try my best to separate those feelings for how I feel about the show itself. And despite what problems I have about it, I do think it is probably the best cartoon on the air right now. But at the end of the day, this is just my 2 cents on the subject. As per usual, I'd like to ask if you guys have seen Steven Universe, and I'd like to think that everyone who visits my channel has. What do you guys think of it? Voice some of your biggest complaints or praises for the show in the comment section down below. Either way, this has been AJ22, and I will talk to you guys later.